Hello friends, I am back again with another one very exciting session with you based on exploring diverse cooking methods. As you all know that already we have covered up part 1 and part 2, and today it is part 3 where we are going to cover up another some part of the total methods of cooking. By this time, whatever we have learned, hopefully we can also have a little bit of recap once our actual lesson will start today. So without wasting further time, I just welcome you to the channel that is Hospitality Education PPT. This is your own channel outside your natural classroom, which is conducted in your respective institutes or colleges. This is a specially designed your own classroom where you can learn anytime, anywhere. So anything under doubt, you can always open it up and go through these videos, which will add on to your knowledge, and also that will develop the confidence about the topic you're going to learn on that moment. Okay, so without wasting further time, let us proceed and welcome you all to the channel that is Hospitality Education PPT. If you see that in our previous session, we had the discussions on a papillote, and also we have discussed about the how this a papillote is conducted in the kitchen, what are the advantages. We have also discussed about what is a sous vide, what is that concept of cooking, and then the basic steps and workflow involved in sous vide process. And also we have discussed about the concept of microwave cooking. So that was one part, and today we're going to start with another one session that is based on what is baking and how the heat is basically transferred in baking process. And of course we are going to discuss about the principles of baking and different baking methods. We also discuss about grilling, and definitely are going to clarify about two more terms, that is broiling and griddling, which are very close to the method that is grilling process. So that will be our point of discussions today in this session. So let us begin. So today we are actually going to discuss about dry heat methods, or we can call it dry heat medium of cooking. And before we actually start explaining this to you, let us get back to our previous session where we have discussed about the entire cooking methods in terms of a flow chart. So if we can go through that, so it will be very easy for us to relate these methods we are going to discuss now. If you remember, in our very first session under this series, we have discussed about methods of cooking and in terms of a flow chart. And if you see the flow chart is like this: moist medium cooking, dry medium cooking, and combination method. We have already completed the moist medium of cooking. All these methods which are getting displayed on your screen, we have discussed thoroughly in this session, starting with boiling, parboiling, blanching, steaming, poaching, stewing, papillote, sous vide, pressure cooking, microwave. All these points, all these methods we have discussed very thoroughly. Now, today our area is basically dry heat method, and let us try to see the classification under this. If you see the dry heat medium or dry heat method can be divided into two categories. One is basically hot air is used for cooking, and another one is fats and oils are used for cooking. And it is coming under dry medium of cooking or dry heat method. What are the methods actually falling in these two groups? Under hot air is used, under that category, we are getting firstly baking, then grilling and broiling. Grilling also having two different kind of grilling process. One is open fire grilling, other one is salamander grilling. And then we are going to discuss about barbecue, roasting. Roasting also having three different parts: spit, pot, and oven roasting. Then we'll discuss about boiling, and boiling also has got two different parts. One is known by casserole, other one is cocotte. Okay, we are going to clarify these two terms. And then tandoor. So these are the methods which are coming under hot air is used, hot medium of cooking, hot air medium of cooking. And as we have given you the agenda, we are going to discuss out of these methods only baking, grilling and broiling today. Once the idea will be absolutely clear, then we will proceed for the barbecue, roasting, boiling and tandoor next week. Okay, so let us go back to our session actually, that is dry heat methods, and we are going to discuss about the hot air is used. That is our part 3 session. What is dry heat of cooking? Dry heat cooking involves cooking food without using any moisture. So that is dry heat. Instead, heat is transferred to the food through air. So no moisture is used, heat is transferred through air or fat or a metal. This method typically involves high temperatures. Often the temperature goes above 300 degree Fahrenheit or 150 degree Celsius, which allows for the browning and caramelization of food and enhancing its flavor. That is the total effect of cooking through hot air method. And let us now discuss the first point. First is that what is baking? What is baking? Though you may have a very rough sketch in your mind, let us try to make it organized and then correctly installed in your mind about the concept of baking. What is baking? Baking is a dry heat cooking method where food is cooked by surrounding it with hot air and dry air as well, which happens typically in an oven. Oven is basically encased container. Inside that there is a heating element, heating system is there. Internal air is getting heated, and with that hot air the food will be cooked. That is the concept of a baking method. This method is used to prepare a wide variety of foods including bread, cakes, cookies, pies, pastries, and many more. Definitely all these terms I have mentioned out here, it will be clarified in your following classes. What is the process of baking? Baking involves placing food in an enclosed space, which is basically a kind of oven, where hot air circulates around it and cooking the food evenly on all sides. That is basically a process. Understood it? What is the temperature like? Baking usually occurs at the temperatures of at least 300 degree Fahrenheit or 150 degree Celsius and can go much higher depending on the recipe. We have told you it is beyond 300 degree Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius. That's the temperature zone. What are the common ingredients are used for baking? Normally, flour, sugar, eggs, butter, and leavening agents like baking powder or yeast are often used in a baking process. So that is overall concept about the baking. Now, the point is, this is the replicated oven in front of you in the image. You can see that how there are different racks which is getting heated. Is a box type container oven. Already you have seen it is very common. I'm not going to show you nothing something new. And if it is new for you all, please look at it properly. You are having the trays in the different racks which are getting baked inside. Once it is baked, you are going to take it out. You can see that the hand is covered with a oven proof gloves so that your hand is by chance is not getting damaged. There is a way of working with the oven. So that is the concept of baking. Now let us know also the science behind it. How heat is transferred in a baking process. Though already we have learned that there are three ways of heat, how heat is transferred. Now first one is the conduction, and here in case of baking we get to see all these three things are happening together. First is the conduction, and you all know already, even then I am going to repeat it for your understanding. This is a transfer of heat through direct contact. Conduction is a transfer of heat through direct contact. When you place a baking pan in the oven, heat is getting conducted from the hot oven rack to the pan and then from there to the food. For example, the bottom of a loaf of bread is heated by conduction from the baking surface. So what we are exactly saying out here, that through conduction process heat is getting also cooked in the baking process time. Especially when we put something in a baking tin or a container and put it on the rack. The firstly the rack is getting heated, and when that baking container is kept on the rack, that is also getting heated through conduction, and from that source the heat is getting penetrated inside the food material, and that's how the conduction process is helping in baking the product inside. That is one way. Second one is what? Convection. What is that convection? This involves the movement of hot air within the oven. That you can see in the image, that inside this the hot air is getting moved from top to bottom and getting circulated evenly. The cold air, hot air is going up, the cold air from the top is coming down, and it is a continuous process. This is known as basically a convection. In a convectional oven, natural convection occurs as hot air rises and cooler air descends, as I have mentioned, creating a circulation of heat. And as a result, convection ovens enhance this process with fans. So there is a fan fitted at the back, which is helping the air to move very evenly inside the oven. And that circulate the hot air more evenly, and leading for what? Leading to more uniform cooking process. So it is not only conduction, convection also working over there inside the oven. And finally what is left? That is radiation. And radiation is the transfer of heat through electromagnetic waves that already we have discussed. The oven walls emit radiant heat, and that cooks the food, similar to how the sun heats the earth. And this is particularly effective for browning the tops of baked goods. So when the side walls of the oven is getting heated, so there also from there we are getting some radiant heat, and that radiant heat is also hitting the food and helping the food to be cooked properly. Okay, and because of that reason we are getting a browning reactions on top. So all these three things are at a time happening while the product is getting baked inside the oven, and that is the concept of heat transfer. Hope it is very clear in your mind now. Okay. Now what are the principles of baking now? The conventional convection oven should be preheated. So whenever you are going for any baking, the oven should be preheated. Otherwise, you won't be getting the proper correct temperature. Baking is purely based on science. So naturally, if you are not attaining the right temperature, your product will be underbaked or overbaked or unevenly baked. So you need to preheat the oven to the right temperature level before you start the baking process, and that is the first and very important principles of baking. Second is the product should be placed evenly in the oven. That means there should be gap evenly so that enough space will be there so that hot air can circulate evenly. Third point, product should be placed in a greased or lined tin or tray so that once it will be baked, it will come out from the tin very easily. Otherwise, there will be a possibility that the food material will stick to the container and in which you are going to bake the product. So always line the tin. It can be a brown paper, it can be a butter paper, or it can be a grease paper, or even the application of little fat or oil at the bottom of the pan. So automatically the product will come out very easily. It will prevent burning and sticking to the container you are using it for baking. Clear? Items taking long time should be placed in lined tin at lower shelf. So food nearer to the heating element will get cooked very fast. So ensure that the product which has got a more time for baking and require high temperature, long prolonged cooking time, they should be always placed at the bottom of the oven rack so that it will get sufficient time to be cooked, rather to be baked properly. Clear? What are the different baking methods? Number one, dry baking method. In this method, when food is placed in preheated oven, steam arises from water content of the food. Every food material has got some water content, and this steam combines with the dry heat of the oven and is used to cook the food. Using this method, cakes, pastry, baked jacket potatoes, etc. are prepared. So dry baking method is what? The product we are going to bake, it has got some water molecules present, some moisture present. So those moisture, once it will be heated, that will create the steam. That steam will be mixed in with the hot air which is there already in the oven, and that will help in cooking process or the baking process. And what are the things we can bake through this dry baking method? Pastries, baked jacket potatoes, different types of cakes, etc. are prepared by this method which is known as dry baking method. There is another one, baking with heat modification. How it is done? In this method, food is placed in a container. Food items such as egg, custard is baked in this way. This prevents the overcooking of food. That means you put the product in a container and bake it in the oven. Okay, so that is the, you are modifying the heat that will prevent the overcooking of the food. Third one, baking with increased humidity. And what is that? In this method, while baking, the humidity of oven is increased by placing a bowl of water, of injecting steam, and thus increasing water content in food, which improves eating quality of the food. So what do? We put a bowl of water inside the oven. What happens? This water will be heated and slowly the steam will be generated. And once the steam will be generated, it will definitely help in baking process. As a result, what will happen in this method? The eating quality of the food will be enhanced. That will be much more softer. Okay, so these are the three different baking methods, and of that there are different process. Dry baking method, baking with a modified heat, baking with increased humidity. These are the basic different methods we use for baking process. Hope this is very clear in your mind now. Next, what is grilling? You can see the image that it is getting, the product is nicely placed on a griller and it is getting grilled, and this is now what we are going to explain. Grilling is a fast, dry method of cooking which uses the intense heat radiated by an electrical element of gas flame or glowing charcoal. It can be either electrical elements or gas flame or glowing charcoal. This can be used for heating the griller, and ultimately the product will be grilled on that. You can see these are the three different ways of grilling. One is placed on a rack. Below that there are fire. The charcoals are there. You can see the fire is coming out. Here in this container you can see something, an oven type things, but it is not an oven. It is something else that I am going to mention, where the heat is coming from top and the food is placed below that. It is also getting a kind of griller, and here also you can see a kind of griddle griller. Here is the surface. It has got two different kinds of surface. One is little corrugated side, other one is a plain surface. It has got two temperature control also. One side normally the temperature is very high. This side where the side is corrugated, and other side the temperature is little lower. So that first the meat will be placed while grilling on the corrugated side where the temperature is much higher to create the grill marks, which is very appetizing. And then once the grill marks are produced, that meat will be lifted and placed on this flat surface where the temperature is comparatively lower, and allow the sufficient time so that the meat will be cooked properly. That is the way how grilling is conducted. Okay. Now let us try to go in depth about the grilling. There are four types of grilling. One is over the heat grilling. What is overheat grilling? Food is, from the name it is very clear. Food is cooked over hot grill bars. These are all grill bars. This you can see in the image. These are all grill bars. Grill bars are preheated and brushed with oil. Otherwise, food will stick to the bars. That is very obvious. That also we have discussed about the baking time as well. The cooking time will depend upon the thickness of the food and temperature of grill bars. So cooking time will depend on two things. One is the thickness of the meat or the food you are going to grill, and the amount of temperature is generated over there. Depending on that, the cooking will be conducted. Cooking time will be finalized. So that is over the heat, on top of the heat. Another one is what? Under the heat. Very clear. The source of heat to cook the food is over the food, like this container, where we can see that the heat is coming on top, from top, meat is placed below that, And this system, this container, this kind of heating elements is known as salamander. This equipment is known as salamander, where the heat source is coming from top. Third one, between the heat. It is one step developed than the salamander. In case of salamander, we are only getting a heat source from the top. In case of between the heat, we are getting another one element of heater at the bottom. So food is basically sandwiched between two elements of heat. Like this grill, the food in between electrically heated grill bars or plates. This method is used for small cuts of meat. Clear? And another one is known as barbecuing, that we have seen that there will be a flame, and in the skewer you can put the meat items and it can be placed on the flame. Automatically it will be grilled. So this is grilling of food on preheated greased bars over fierce heat. And now this heat can be generated either through gas, charcoal or wood. When solid fuel is used, care should be taken that food is placed on bars when the flame and smoke dies out. So ensure that whenever you are using gas, charcoal or wood, there will be immense amount of smoke generated and the flame will be also there. So you have to ensure the smoke is not so much of smoke is there. If the smokes are coming from the wood and all, that will spoil the flavor of the meat. So ensure that the flame and the smoke is dying out, then only you are going to start the barbecuing process. Food is marinated in and brushed with barbecue sauce during the cooking process. Now whenever you are holding the meat against the flame, what will happen? There will be dripping of the moisture from the meat items, and automatically a tendency will be the meat will become dry. And to prevent that, what you are going to do is you are going to apply some moisture in terms of a barbecue sauce, which will be brushed on top, or you can also moist it by using some fats or melted fat and oil on top, so that the meat will remain soft. And this process is known as basting. Basting. Basting is the process. Basting is basically keeping the meat moist during the grilling process by applying some melted fat or oil on top of the meat. Clear? That is known as barbecue. Fine. Next is broiling. We have told you that broiling and grilling, there are very two similar kind of terms associated with grilling that we are going to clarify. So broiling is a cooking process which is very similar to grilling and which involves the use of very high heat. Note it down. Broiling is conducted on a very high heat for a short period of time, and the heat source is from the above. Heat is always coming from the above. That is the broiling process. That is the definition. Immense heat, short span of cooking, heat source is from the above. That is the broiling process. Broiling can be of two types. One is oven broiling. The same thing can be conducted in the oven by following this definition. So once it is conducted in the oven, it is known as the oven broiling, and once it is conducted in a pan, it will be known as a pan broiling. The pan can be placed under the flame, under this heat, and automatically it will be broiled. Okay, let us try to clarify it little more. Heat source. Firstly, heat source. In an oven, the broiler is usually a coil or a burner at the top. When you set your oven to broil, this element heats up to a very high temperature and typically around 550 degree Fahrenheit or 280 degree Celsius or centigrade. Okay, so that is the heat source. Then what is the cooking process? Food is placed on a broiler pan or a baking sheet close to the heating element. Heat is coming from top. Now the food is placed in a broiler pan or a baking sheet or baking tray, and it is placed in the oven very near to the heating element. The intense heat, they act on the exterior of the product and it sears. Sears means it steals from outside and creates some browning color, creating a caramelized crust while cooking the interior. So that is a cooking process. What are the suitable foods for that? Broiling is ideal for thinner cuts of meat. Why thinner cuts? The logic is very high heat and short span of cooking process. That's why you need to have a very thinner cut of meat. What are those? Such as chicken breast, pork tenderloin, medallion. What is medallion? Medallion is another one culinary terms which means a thin, flat, round piece of meat or fish that is known as the medallion, and strips of steaks that can also be broiled. It is also great for fish, vegetables, and even some fruits. So these are the suitable fruits and food we can use for broiling process. What are the advantages? This method is quick and effective for achieving a crispy, browned exterior without overcooking the inside. That's the advantage. It's perfect for adding a finishing touch to dishes that need a bit of color and texture. So that is basically the advantage of broiling. Hope it's clear in your mind. Now we are proceeding to the next. What is griddling? Now try to notice how it is differing from broiling. Griddling is done on a solid cooking surface called a griddle, with or without fat or oil. Sometimes little fat is added to prevent the sticking. The temperature is adjustable and much lower. Highlight this point. In case of broiling, we have discussed that the heat will be from top and it will be high heat, intense heat. In case of griddle, it will be low heat, around only 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius than on a grill. In addition to meat, items such as eggs and pancakes are also grilled. So you understand that? Fine. You can see that there are few, the griddle, the flat surface which is electrically operated. We are having the control temperature knob. We can control it, and this pan can also be, these two kinds of pans are also here. We can use it for griddle purpose. In both the cases, you can see that the heat is coming from the bottom. In case of broiling, the heat is coming from top. So there is a clear difference between broiling and griddling. Clear? Now, we talk little more about griddling process. Surface. The griddling involves cooking on a flat, smooth surface, typically a griddle pan or a flat top grill. This surface allows for even heat distribution. So why we need a flat surface? You understood now, for the even distribution of the heat. Now the heat source. The heat source is directly underneath the griddle, providing consistent and controlled heat. So in case of broiler, the heat source was from the top. In case of griddle, the heat source is from the bottom, just below the griddle, the heat is there. Cooking temperature, already you have mentioned 350 degree Fahrenheit maximum, not beyond that. What are the food we can use for griddling? It is ideal for cooking food that require a flat surface, firstly. And what are those things we can use? That is making a pancake, you can use a griddle. For the eggs also, for making fried eggs, you can always use griddle. Frying the bacon, you can also use griddle. Even you can prepare a grilled sandwich also by griddling process. It can also handle burgers and vegetables well. So that is the way we can. You have seen, must have seen by this time many times in a TV that how the chefs are griddling different burgers and frying a bacon, preparing a fried egg, making a sandwich and serving it to the guests. It is a very appetizing to look at. So these are the methods normally done in a griddling process. Cooking style. Griddling creates a sear on the food. Sear means browning of the meat or the food from outside to create an extra sealing so that the food is not going to lose the moisture. And as a result, the food will remain juicy and soft. But without the smoky flavor associated with grilling. In case of grilling, what we get? We get a smoky flavor which is very much missing in case of griddling because there is no scope of food is coming in contact with the smoke. Clear? So that is the way how grilling is conducted. So by understanding grilling, then broiling and griddling, the idea in your mind is made very clear and transparent now. There should not be any confusion. Okay. So thank you very much for attending this session and hopefully you are enjoying it by learning many new things about the methods of cooking, and your valued comments will make me understand that how well you are understanding it. And if you are having any doubts, anything in your mind, any questions, keep on learning by putting me in the comment box. Don't forget to like if you like at all, then subscribe and press the bell button so that next time whenever a new video will be uploaded, he'll be the first person to get the alarm out of it. Accordingly, you can check it. And our session on this exploring the cooking methods will be continued. Next week also we'll be having a similar kind of session with another some other batches of methods of cooking. So happy learning. Till then, we meet next week. Till then, thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.